true power is not exercised with screams or visible threats. It is exercised in the shadows, with a cold smile and a handshake that seals destinies. Roy Cohn understood this better than anyone in 20th century America. He was not the most powerful man of his time, but he was the man the powerful called when they needed something to happen without leaving traces. His legacy is not written in law books or professional ethics manuals. It is written in destroyed careers, pulverized reputations, in enemies who disappeared from the political and social map without knowing what hit them. Cohn did not leave a philosophical system. He left something more dangerous, a manual of operations to navigate the world as if it were a battlefield, where morality is a luxury only losers can afford. Roy Cohn was born in the Bronx in 1927, the son of a New York Court of Appeals judge. From his childhood, he was exposed to the internal mechanisms of the judicial system, but what he learned was not respect for the law, but an understanding of its malleability. The law was not a set of immutable principles. It was a tool, an instrument that could be shaped, twisted, and instrumentalized to serve those who knew how to wield it. By the age of 20, he was an assistant prosecutor. At 23, he was a key figure in the trial of the atomic spies Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, a case that ended with both being executed and remains to this day surrounded by controversy over irregular procedures and questionable evidence. For Cohn, this was not a stain on his career. It was his calling card. The Rosenberg case revealed something fundamental about Cohn's psychology. For him, winning was not enough. He needed to annihilate. It was not enough to prove guilt. All possibility of redemption, all possibility of public sympathy, all escape routes had to be destroyed. The Rosenbergs were not only condemned, they were turned into symbols of absolute evil, stripped of all humanity in the public imagination. And Cohn was one of the main architects of that narrative. He learned early that in the battle for public perception, the truth is secondary. What matters is the story you manage to make people believe. And that story must be so simple, so visceral, so emotionally resonant that the complexity of the facts becomes irrelevant. This learning led him directly to his collaboration with Senator Joseph McCarthy during the infamous McCarthy-era trials. Cohn became McCarthy's chief counsel, the mastermind behind the hearings that destroyed hundreds of careers based on often unfounded accusations of communist sympathies. This is where Cohn perfected his method, where the 3 rules that would define his entire career crystallized into a complete operating system for the manipulation of power. Roy Cohn's first rule is simple but devastating. Attack, attack, attack. Never defend yourself. Defense is an admission of weakness. When you are accused of something, no matter how true the accusation is, your response should not be to explain, justify, or deny with nuances. Your response should be an immediate, fierce counterattack so aggressive that it puts your accuser on the defensive. Cohn understood something that most people take decades to comprehend or never do. In the theater of public conflict, the audience is not evaluating the truth. They are evaluating strength. The person who appears most confident, most aggressive, most relentless is the person whom the audience assumes is right. This tactic completely reverses the conventional logic of conflict. In a rational world, the one who makes an accusation must prove it, and the accused has the right to defend themselves by presenting contrary evidence. But Cohn operated in a world where rationality was a thin facade over an ocean of primitive emotions. The audience does not process complex arguments. It processes signals of dominance and submission. When someone accuses you and you respond by explaining, justifying, or softening, you are sending a signal of submission. You are accepting the framework where they are the prosecutor and you are the accused. Cohn immediately broke that framework with a counterattack so violent that the original accuser was forced to retreat. During McCarthy's hearings, when someone questioned his methods or accusations, Cohn did not answer the questions. He responded with insinuations about the questioner. Why do you defend the communists? What do you have to hide? Are you also sympathetic? Within seconds, the person who had asked a legitimate question found themselves defending against implicit accusations, and the original question was buried under a barrage of counter-accusations. This tactic does not win arguments through logic. It wins them through exhaustion. Most people do not have the stomach for a prolonged and brutal conflict. When they face someone who counterattacks without limits, without regard for decorum or civilized debate, they retreat. And that retreat is interpreted by the audience as an admission of guilt. This first rule is based on a deep understanding of mass psychology. Crowds do not analyze, they react. They do not evaluate arguments through careful reflection. They evaluate them through quick heuristics. Who appears more confident? Who appears stronger? Who seems to have control? Cohn turned each confrontation into a demonstration of dominance, and dominance is contagious. Once you establish a reputation for being relentless in counterattacks, people start to think twice before confronting you. Fear is preventative. You don't need to destroy all your enemies if you can make most of your potential enemies decide it's not worth becoming your target. But unbacked aggression is just noise, which leads to Roy Cohn's second rule: never admit a mistake, never apologize. An apology is surrender, and surrender is death. Cohn constantly made mistakes, made accusations that turned out to be false, employed tactics that any objective observer would consider unethical or illegal. But never, at any point in his public life, did he admit to being wrong. This was not irrational stubbornness. It was calculated strategy. Because admitting a mistake, no matter how small, sets a precedent. It tells your opponents that there is a line you crossed, that there is enough pressure to make you yield. And once you yield once, the next surrender is easier. The psychology behind this rule is counterintuitive. Conventional wisdom says that admitting mistakes makes you appear honest, human, trustworthy. And in intimate personal relationships, this may be true. But Cohn did not operate in the realm of intimate relationships. He operated in the realm of public power, and in that realm, the rules are different. Admitting error is interpreted as weakness, and weakness invites more attacks. When a public figure apologizes, what follows is not forgiveness but increased scrutiny. The media and adversaries sniff blood in the water. An apology for an offense leads to demands for apologies for 10 more. An admission of error becomes evidence of a pattern of mistakes. Cohn understood that in the game of power, consistency matters more than accuracy. It is better to be constantly wrong, but unwavering, than occasionally correct, but hesitant. Unwaveringness projects certainty, and certainty is magnetic. People want to follow someone who appears absolutely confident, even if that confidence is completely unfounded. Doubt is repulsive. Ambivalence is weakness. Cohn built his entire public persona on the basis of absolute certainty and total immunity to shame. This immunity to shame is perhaps the most disturbing element of his psychology. Shame is the social mechanism that keeps most people within acceptable behavioral boundaries. When we violate social norms, we experience shame, and that uncomfortable emotion motivates us to modify our behavior, apologize, and reconcile with the group. Cohn had completely disabled this mechanism. He could be confronted with irrefutable evidence of his lies, manipulations, and dirty tactics, and he would simply deny the evidence or attack the person presenting it. There was no psychological pressure that could make him retract. This quality made him simultaneously powerful and unpredictable. Normal adversaries have lines they will not cross, standards they will uphold, reputations they will protect. These are levers that can be used against them. Cohn had no levers. There was no appeal to his sense of decency, because he did not operate with that consideration. There was no threat to his reputation to stop him, because he had long accepted that he would be hated. In a sense, he had unleashed a dark power by completely abandoning the need to be loved or respected. He only needed to be feared, and fear is easier to generate when you have no self-imposed limits. But these first two rules, no matter how effective they are guerrilla tactics. They can win individual battles, but do not build empires. This leads to the third and most sophisticated rule of Roy Cohn. It doesn't matter what you do, it matters who you know. Power does not reside in titles or official positions. It resides in networks of relationships. Cohn meticulously built, over decades, a network of contacts ranging from mafiosos to politicians, from media magnates to Hollywood celebrities, from judges to FBI agents. He was not the man on the throne. He was the man who could directly call all the men on all the thrones. This network gave him a power that no official position could have provided. As a private lawyer, he technically lacked state authority, but in practice, he could make impossible things happen. You need a permit that would normally take months. Cohn makes a call, and you have it in days. You need a negative article about you not to be published. Cohn knows the editor. You need a prosecutor to see your case from a certain angle. Cohn went to school with the prosecutor. This ability to make the system move according to your will is the purest form of power, and it does not require popular election or official appointment. It only requires being indispensable to enough important people. Cohn cultivated these relationships with the same lack of scruples he applied to everything else. He didn't care if his clients were figures of organized crime or respectable politicians, if they were contemptible or admirable. The only thing that mattered was whether they were useful, if they had their own power, if they could be incorporated into the network. And once you were in Cohn's network, he knew how to make you stay there. He did favors that created implicit debts. He kept secrets that could be revealed if loyalty faltered. He connected people to each other, becoming indispensable as an intermediary. Every connection he facilitated increased his own value because it meant that more people depended on him to keep their own networks intact. This networking strategy is fundamentally different from the way most people understand networking. Conventional networking is transactional and relatively transparent. You exchange favors, build goodwill, maintain professional connections that could be mutually beneficial. Cohn's networking was somewhat darker. It was the deliberate construction of a system of mutual dependencies and shared secrets that bound people to him in ways they could not easily escape. You were not simply connected to Cohn, you were committed to him. Breaking the relationship potentially meant exposing yourself to risks he knew, but others did not. The most notorious example of this third rule in action was its relation to Donald Trump. Cohn met Trump in the 70s when the young real estate promoter and his father were being investigated by the Department of Justice for racial discrimination in their rental properties. The conventional response would have been to negotiate a settlement, pay a fine, implement policy changes, and move on. Cohn recommended the opposite, suing the federal government for $100 million for defamation. The lawsuit had no chance of success and was eventually dismissed, but it served its purpose. It turned a narrative where the Trumps were accused of discrimination into a narrative where the Trumps were victims of government overreach. In the court of public opinion, which was the only court that truly mattered, they transformed defense into offense. Trump absorbed Cohn's lessons like a dedicated student absorbs the teachings of a revered teacher. The immediate and fierce counterattack to any accusation. The absolute denial of admitting error or showing weakness. Building loyalties through favors and the willingness to break norms that others consider inviolable. The relationship between Cohn and Trump illustrates something fundamental about how dark power is transmitted, not through texts or theories, but through modeling and practice. Cohn did not teach Trump a philosophical system, he showed him how to operate, and Trump observed, imitated, and eventually perfected the model for an era of mass media and social networks. But Cohn's 3 rules, no matter how effective they are for accumulating and exercising power, have a cost, and that cost is eventually paid. Cohn died in 1986, despised by much of society, abandoned by many of the powerful he had served, fighting legal battles over unpaid taxes and accusations of unethical conduct. He died from AIDS complications at a time when the disease carried a brutal stigma, and until the end, he publicly denied his diagnosis, claiming he suffered from liver cancer. Even on his deathbed, the second rule maintained its dominance. Never admit what others might interpret as weakness. Roy Cohn's tragedy is not that he was evil. Many people are evil, and history forgets them. The tragedy is that he was effective, so effective that his operational model continues to be replicated decades after his death by people who may have never heard his name, but who absorb his tactics from the cultural environment he helped create. The 3 rules did not die with him. They have become part of the standard operating manual of certain sectors of politics, business, and media. They have been normalized to the point where what once seemed exceptionally cynical now simply appears realistic. And here is where Cohn's lesson becomes truly unsettling. Because the 3 rules work. They do not work to create a just society. They do not work to build genuine trust or cooperation. They do not work for collective well-being. But they work for the individual willing to employ them without moral restrictions. They work to accumulate personal power, to protect oneself from consequences, to manipulate systems designed to operate under the assumption that most people will play by certain minimum rules of decency. The legal system, for example, is designed on the assumption that most lawyers operate within certain ethical boundaries, that most participants, at least nominally, respect the pursuit of truth and justice. When someone like Cohn enters that system with no commitment to those values, only a commitment to winning at any cost, he has an immediate advantage. It's like playing chess against someone who secretly moves the pieces when you're not looking. The game is designed under the assumption that both players will follow the rules, and that assumption is the vulnerability exploited by those who have no restrictions. This is Cohn's central paradox. They only work because most people do not use them. If everyone operated according to these principles, the system would collapse into a Hobbesian war of all against all. But as long as the majority maintains at least a veneer of decency, as long as most self-censor based on ethical considerations, the unscrupulous operator has a playing field where their tactics give them a decisive advantage. It is parasitic, functioning by extracting value from a system that depends on others maintaining the standards it violates. The philosophical question that Cohn raises but never answers is, what kind of life is that? Winning every battle, accumulating power and connections, being feared and served, and yet dying alone, despised, unable to admit your own vulnerability, even when the body crumbles. Cohn built such a complete armor that it became a prison. He couldn't show weakness because he had built his entire identity on invulnerability. He couldn't trust anyone because he had spent decades manipulating everyone. He couldn't seek genuine help because any admission of need would violate the rules that had made him powerful. In his final years, when his health was declining and many of his allies were abandoning him, when the secrets he had kept no longer inspired fear because times had changed and new players dominated the game, Cohn clung to the rules with growing desperation. He attacked those who accused him of being ill. He denied the undeniable. He invoked connections that no longer held the power they once did. The rules that had served him so well during his rise became the chains that bound him as he fell. But recognizing this tragedy does not diminish the effectiveness of the rules within their operational context. And that is the real horror, knowing that something is destructive in the long term, knowing that it builds power on foundations of fear and manipulation, knowing that it corrodes the institutions that make social cooperation possible, and yet recognizing that, in the short term, in specific contexts, it works. The person willing to be more aggressive, more ruthless, more free from moral constraints, has a tactical advantage over those who limit themselves through ethical considerations. This is the reason why figures like Cohn are simultaneously fascinating and repulsive. They represent the possibility of unlimited power, the temptation to operate outside the boundaries that constrain others. And in moments of frustration, when you feel that the system is unfair, when you see others violate rules without consequences, the temptation to adopt Cohn's model can be powerful. If everyone is cheating, why should I be the only one playing fair? If the system rewards ruthless behavior, am I not a fool to limit myself? But here is the final trick, the truth that Cohn would never have admitted. Rules have an expiration date. They work spectacularly well during the ascent, when you are accumulating power and building your network. They become liabilities during the descent, when you need genuine loyalty instead of loyalty based on fear, when you need genuine help instead of calculated transactions. Cohn died surrounded by people who were there out of obligation or calculation, not out of genuine affection or respect. He died unable to ask for what he truly needed because admitting need would have broken the armor he had polished throughout his life. Roy Cohn's 3 rules are an operations manual for a specific type of success. Success measured in terms of accumulated power, defeated enemies, imposed will. They are not a manual for happiness, inner peace, genuine relationships, or a positive legacy. They are tools, amoral tools that cut in both directions. They can help you win battles and can destroy everything that makes winning worthwhile. The real question is not whether these rules work. They do, the evidence is clear. The question is what you are willing to sacrifice to implement them. Because the price is not paid only at the end, it is paid at every moment when you choose attack over honesty, invulnerability over authenticity, calculated utility over genuine connection. It is paid in the impossibility of knowing whether someone is with you because they value you or because they fear you. It is paid in the gradual erosion of any part of you that is not in service of the accumulation of power. So there you are, now knowing the 3 rules Roy Cohn used to build and exercise a power that few people achieve in a lifetime. Attack relentlessly. Never admit error. Build networks of mutual dependence. You know they work because history proves it. You know the cost because history also reveals it. The unavoidable and unsettling personal question is, at what point in your life are you already employing some version of these rules? When was the last time you counterattacked instead of admitting you might be wrong? How many of your relationships are genuine and how many are transactional? Are you building power or building a prison? And if you look at yourself honestly and see elements of Cohn's model in your own way of operating, what will you do with that information? Will you use it to change course or interpret it as validation that you are playing the game correctly? Because that choice, that moment of decision when no one is watching and there are no immediate consequences, that is the true test of who you are beneath all the strategies and tactics. Are you someone who uses power or someone whom power uses?